start recording. And then I will just start sharing my screen. As ever, I realize I haven't even really introduced myself, but it's because I just assumed everyone knew who I was. Isn't that terrible? The arrogance, honestly. Um, so, um, as ever, if anyone has any questions or comments at any point, please feel free to interrupt. I'm not precious about continuing to actually get through everything. So please do let me know if you have any questions or any comments about anything that I'm saying. If you already know what I'm saying, let me know and I can just skip through stuff. I just thought it was kind of a good refresher, really. And yeah, I'll get started. So yes, I'm assuming everyone knows me, but if you don't, I'm Laura Newman. I'm the Library Education and Partnerships Manager at Greenwich. I think I know most of you at this point, but if not, hi and welcome. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about academic integrity and Gen AI. Largely, this is just because we've been having quite a lot of issues, I guess. Um, so the sort of increase in the availability of Gen AI, I guess, has led definitely to increased problems with academic integrity and academic misconduct at the university. We're certainly finding that, and I know from a lot of the partners I've spoken to, they're finding the same thing. So as a university and as a team, we've been looking at how we kind of deal with this. And one of the ways that we are looking at it is essentially just trying to have really open conversations with students about it. So that's kind of the lens I'm looking at it from, I guess. And I'm sure any of you are doing anything similar. And if you have any examples as I go through of like things that you are doing, please do share those because I'm sure they'd be really interesting and helpful for all of us because I feel like this is an area we're all kind of having to deal with. And therefore, any ways in which you are doing this, then please do share if you're happy to share good practice. What is academic integrity? So I would be interested if anyone has a definition that you use. Like, what do you think academic integrity is, or how do you explain it to students, I guess? You can feel free to unmute or you can put something in the chat if it's helpful. Can everyone see my screen, by the way? So to hope everyone can see my screen. Okay. Thank you, Erin. Yes, Doro. So academic integrity, we would think about transparency and reliability. Yep. Yep. I would probably use similar terminology there, to be honest.
I'd also say it's about being like ethical and responsible. So students sort of taking ownership, actual ownership of their own academic work and realizing that they are fully responsible for what it is that they're producing and sending.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree, Erin. I would say the same, exactly. It is very much about ethical practice, right? Um, so yeah, so I would say it's about demonstrating honesty, transparency, and integrity in all areas of their academic practice, and showing those good academic principles. And like you say, demonstrating those ethics essentially. So where's my computer now not working? Oh, here we go. So why is it so important? Because obviously, as we all know, we do have to talk to the students about this. They don't necessarily just take it at face value. So why is it so important? It's important because that's how they succeed academically, essentially. I know that sounds quite mercenary, putting it like that. But in my experience, that's what a lot of the students care about, right? They care about success, they care about passing their course and their assessments, and graduating with a good degree. So I think it is, it sounds mercenary, but it's a good way of reminding them that this is how they succeed, essentially. And it demonstrates that good practice that we're looking at, and that we're looking for throughout their degree. And then, like Erin said, it's ethical as well. So it's showing that they have those ethics. And of course, for a lot of them, those ethics will then continue into their chosen careers. So, for example, anyone that is studying anything legal related, obviously ethics are a huge thing in terms of like law careers. Similarly with healthcare, ethics are a huge thing. So you can absolutely like link this to their future careers for a lot of them as well, in terms of it's not just about academia. So then the flip side of that is academic misconduct, right? So if we're describing academic integrity as being transparency, honesty, showing ethics, then how would we describe academic misconduct?
I mean, we could be here all day.
Couldn't we just?
I mean, off the top of my head, so obviously plagiarism is number one. But also I think more and more sort of just the reliance, if we're talking about sort of Gen AI, the reliance on AI to create work without sort of checking. So, it becomes kind of a fabrication in that way, because obviously there can be a lot of mistakes and everything like that. But also, I think part of academic misconduct around all of this comes with sort of not accepting and not taking responsibility for utilizing these tools, which can be really, really helpful, but you not taking responsibility for utilizing these tools in a way that does constitute sort of cheating in a way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you're right. We absolutely could be here all day. There's so many examples of academic misconduct. I have put a few here, but I would say as a kind of umbrella term, we would say it's offences which are considered unethical. So the flip side of the academic integrity, which is the ethical, this would be anything that is unethical. Now, obviously, like you said, Erin, that can have a huge range of things. So plagiarism is obviously top of the list. But we could say collusion as well. We could say the falsification of data. And the misuse of Gen AI is obviously very high up there nowadays. But obviously, there's 1,000 other examples and nuances of academic misconduct, which students don't always necessarily understand. And I think it's important that we look at both sides of that. But and we kind of make it clear to students how we deal with academic misconduct. So at the university, as most of you already know, it is the responsibility of the assessor to report the offences. So that will mean the person marking it most of the time. So that'll be your academics or your teachers. There's several categories of offences. So they range from sort of more minor to more severe. They will go through an investigation or an AOP, so an academic offences panel. And then if they're found guilty, then there's sanctions applied, of course. And again, those can vary quite largely in terms of what they are. So they can be as simple as losing some marks, or obviously the more extreme versions are they may fail an assessment or a module, or it can lead to expulsion from the university in extreme cases. I have put a link there to the assessment misconduct procedure in case anyone's interested. I will share all these slides afterwards. But again, I think it's important to, so we're very much trying in the academic and digital skills team to not talk about things too punitively with students. So we're trying to have more open, sort of positive conversations around academic integrity, but obviously it is important to make them aware of the consequences of not having academic integrity and of committing academic misconduct. So it's kind of that fine balancing line, right? At least that's what we're finding. I'm not sure about anyone else. So how do we link these essentially? So how do we look at balancing, like I said, that kind of line between talking about academic integrity and also academic misconduct, and then linking that in with Gen AI, because of course that is what is incredibly prevalent at the minute. And certainly for the university, I think we are finding much higher numbers of cases that are involving Gen AI now than we used to. So it used to be more like kind of plagiarism through copying and pasting from like journal articles, for example, or where you would have essay mills, things like that. And obviously that's like really transitioned a lot more now into the misuse of Gen AI. So the increased use of Gen AI, like I said, does place more importance on us talking about academic integrity. And of course, as librarians and library staff and support staff, we are like really well placed to talk to students about that, because of course we do have that supportive role a lot of the time. But of course, like I said, it can lead to academic misconduct, which students we find a lot of the time are not necessarily aware of. They don't understand the lines and the limits and the consequences there. And obviously, like I said, it's important to talk about like both sides of that coin, essentially. So, Integrity Matters is a resource which we have available, which helps students talk about this. I'm going to preface this by saying this is only available to franchise students. So anyone with QA students, this will not be available to your students. And the reason for that is it's available through Moodle. So for those of you who have franchise students, this is a resource you can point them towards. It's self-directed. It's a self-contained Moodle course. It's gamified learning, I guess, which talks about academic integrity, academic misconduct, and it's got a lot of interactive content. So it's got like personas that they can kind of work through, group chats, and like lots of sort of questions that they can look at different scenarios. So it checks their kind of understanding of academic integrity and academic misconduct. And it does include a lot about Gen AI and how that links in with academic integrity and academic misconduct. So if anyone's interested, again, I've put a link there. So please do feel free to advertise that to your franchise students. Just to emphasize that again. I'm so sorry. I know for those of you who have QA, this is frustrating when I'm like, oh, here's this great resource, but you can't use it. But unfortunately, that just is the way it is with the restrictions on the QA students. That's outside of my control, I hasten to add. And then similarly, we also have Studiosity. So just a reminder to those of you who have franchise students, again, this is available for franchise students. We rolled that out in September to partners, and I know some of you have been looking at it with your students and using it, and it's been helpful. So that's good to know. But again, just a reminder, it's an AI tool where students can upload their assessment drafts, and then they get really quick feedback on that through the AI tool, and it's to do with their academic writing. So it will suggest improvements. There's also a new tool within Studiosity for those of you who are using it, which is task alignment. So it'll give more context specific feedback if the students upload their assessment brief as well. So that's also a good thing to point them towards. And again, is something that we are really pointing them towards in terms of developing that academic integrity. Okay, so for those of you who are QA, we're back onto the things that you can talk about. I always find it's helpful to kind of just contextualize and give a definition of Gen AI. So the definition we use is from IBM, and that is just that it is AI that can create original content in response to a user's prompt or request. And obviously the type of that content can vary. So it can be text, audio, code, whatever. But it is original content. So that's the kind of difference between Gen AI and normal AI, do we call it? Just AI? I don't know. But that's the difference, essentially. So we have lots of policies, as you'll all know at this point, and I'm sure you guys have them too. In fact, I would be curious, do your institutions have their own policies on Gen AI at this point? So Greenwich has, as you can see linked there, a responsible use of Gen AI document, and we have guidance for students using AI. This is currently being updated, so we're hoping to get it updated this summer, and then I'll send you all the links once we've updated it. But I am curious to know if anyone else has policies internally, in terms of your institutions. So do your colleges have policies, or do you follow the Greenwich one?
Yeah, we have policies,
Okay.
which we're updating as well. Oh, sorry, my cat has decided to join. Yeah, we do have internal policies, obviously, because we offer different courses. So, and that's sort of being worked on at the moment. We're looking at updating them as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's the problem with Gen AI, right? It's like you can't keep up with it essentially. So that's what we're finding right now is I think our policy is like 2 or 3 years old at this point. So we're like, oh, it's so out of date. So we need to completely update it. But obviously you can never fully be on top of it. So I'm glad to hear that we're not the only ones who are trying to update it. Okay, and so Dora, you have policies as well at Saxion. Great. Donna, you have guidance, okay, rather than a policy. Yeah. At Nescott, yeah, great. Okay, good. So yeah, it's good to know that I think it's increasingly becoming more common, right? Like I think probably a couple of years ago, we were all still scrambling around a little bit to deal with this. But I think most people now do have either policies or guidance for students in terms of how they can use this. But as we all know, students don't necessarily read guidance or policies. So I think it's really important that we talk to them about this, right? This is where we are uniquely placed to kind of have these conversations with them, and try and get them to think about it in a positive light, I would say, rather than in a negative light, or at least that's certainly the Greenwich theory, is that we are positive about Gen AI while also being realistic about the limitations and the issues. Okay, so do any of you know what models your students are using, or what are you using? Like, are you using it in your work? So I certainly use Gen AI in my work sometimes, to help me with, summarizing things or helping me to write an email or put together a schedule or something. I find it does help me save time with some of my tasks that are more sort of admin-y based. So, is anyone using any particular types of models? So I'm using Copilot mainly when I use it.
So we've just recently launched our own internal AI. We
Oh,
have a Plumpton College AI system, which staff are being encouraged to use, purely because it remains internal. So in terms of like confidentiality and things like that, it really just helps with that. I know a lot of people use Copilot. But yeah, the internal AI was launched probably about a month ago, and it's being pushed really quite heavily with staff to use.
interesting. Wow. Yeah, an internal one is really interesting, Erin.
Are you finding that works well, Erin? As well as a Copilot and.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that obviously it's going to get better as it learns. As with any AI, it's going to get better as more people use it and input more sort of stuff. For most internal things, it's quite good. And I think it's been quite useful, but I know that there are some staff who still use external AI things depending on what it is that they're working on. But yeah, our IT department in particular are really trying to push staff to use the internal one as much as possible, not only to sort of help it learn, but also just as a good practice, just to sort of try and keep things as internal as possible, particularly if it's anything to do with doing stuff around students and potential sort of confidentiality matters and things like that.
Yeah, I can definitely see the benefits to it. And I think we've experimented with a bit of both. I think mainly most people using Copilot as part of our M365, but we've trained Gen AI on things like our new resources, so that people have got like a chatbot and they can find, it can link to resources we've got. But it's probably like what you're saying, Erin. There's hoping it gets better as it gets access to more
Yeah,
information.
I mean, the reality is that that's what's going to happen, as you get more sort of stuff in there. So basically, the way that this is sort of being pushed to staff is that it's completely secure, and that's how it's really being sort of explained as the tool to use rather than something external, and really sort of pushing sort of the responsibility that we as staff have to maintain, the boundaries and the confidentiality levels for students and staff as well, and just really trying to channel us to use that. I know that it's the way that it's really good because it's linked in with our internal system, so it helps with like finding stuff as well, because fortunately / unfortunately we use SharePoint to store a lot of things, and trying to find stuff on SharePoint through the SharePoint search can be horrific. So using this is actually really good because it's a lot quicker in finding documents and policies and things like that than trying to search manually. So in that way, it's kind of being touted as an efficiency tool more than anything. But I think more and more people are going to be using it for other things, just because it's going to be sort of the place that everyone goes to.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm fascinated by having like the internal ones. I mean, like you say, obviously the confidentiality thing is a huge deal. So yeah, like several of you, so Doro, Aaron, we're using Copilot at Greenwich as part of the 365 subscription. And obviously, because that's kind of paid for, it's, I guess, more secure, but exactly, there's still very much a confidentiality issue. And we're certainly finding that although staff seem to largely be using Copilot, it's not necessarily the case for the students. So we are finding there's still a lot of different models that the students are using. So I've put a few in there. So Gemini, ChatGPT, obviously, Claude, Apple Intelligence, but obviously there's 1,000 more. So there are so many that they are using. And of course, confidentiality is one of the things that then we do have to concern ourselves with if they are using these tools, particularly if they're using some of the open source AI ones. So how are we saying AI is helpful? So like, how do you talk about this with your students? What do you say in terms of how you can use it, or how they can use it in their academic work, and how it might be useful to them? What kind of things do you talk about with them?
Sorry, me again. So I really push it as an efficiency tool. And the example that I give, so I've just recently completed a PhD, and when you're doing any kind of research or any kind of sort of academic work, you have so many articles and things that you need to read, and you can try and get as much information from an abstract as possible, but sometimes that doesn't work. So the way I use it with students, and the way I've always used it in the past when I was teaching as well, is saying to students it's a really, really good way of just vetting information before you dive deep into it. So you can basically upload a PDF and say, okay, this is my research project, I'm looking at whatever. is this article actually going to be worth my time going into and reading in depth? It'll do a scan, it'll basically go, this is what it covers, and then the student can then evaluate, yes, I actually need to read this, or actually, no, this isn't relevant to my studies, I can move on to the next one. And so I did that with my undergraduates when I was teaching, and they found that really, really useful, and they found it helped with their efficiency in terms of sort of evaluating what was useful. So that's the way that I really push it to students, sort of use it as a tool to try and help decide if something is worth the time that it's going to take you to read the entire thing in detail. I said the other thing that you can use it for is summarizing, and I say this to staff as well, you know, it's good for summarizing meeting notes, it's good for summarizing things and getting the clear sort of, you know, overview of what's going on, but mostly as an efficiency tool. That's how I really, really push it, and I always underline it with, you're still going to have to read the articles that are important, and you still have to read the chapters and books that are important, but it can help you work out what is actually important.
Yeah, agreed. That's exactly what I would say as well, Erin. And I think that is true, like you say, for staff as well. Exactly. So it's not just for students. Does anyone have any other ways in which you would talk to students about it, or what you would say to them they can use it for, or how it's helpful? So does anyone talk to students about this? Do you run sessions? Do you mention it in any of your information literacy or training sessions that you are doing with students? Do you talk to them about it when you have like one-to-ones in the library, for example? Or is this still very much it's if you get asked about it kind of thing, rather than a default, we talk about it all the time? So the way in which we would talk to students about it, so the academic librarians at Greenwich, so we would generally sort of fairly simplistically say to students, it's helpful for explaining information and answering questions. So like Erin said, you can use it to work out the kind of information that you might want to use. You can use it to answer questions. So what does this, you know, explain this concept to me, for example. Drawing information from lots of different places. So doing an initial kind of search for articles, for example, or for policies on a particular thing. For summarizing the information. So exactly what is this article about? What is this book chapter about? Is it helpful to me, essentially? Helping with phrasing, terminology, vocab, so you can use it to help you find alternative keywords, for example, for a search. Explain terminology and if it's complicated. Again, with vocab, help you to set a tone. So, you know, say, is this in an academic tone, for example, if you give an example of a writing. So there's loads of ways in which it's helpful. And obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but in a sort of simplistic way of talking to students, this is kind of what we would start with as a starting point. And then leading on from that, we would give some more examples. So generally, we would say the way in which you can use it with integrity in an ethical manner within the policies and the guidance is that you can use it in your sort of planning and learning stage, and then you can use it to improve things as well. And so the way in which we would kind of break that down most of the time is by saying, you can use it to explain a concept. So that's your kind of planning stage where you don't fully understand something. You're just trying to learn a bit more about it. You can use it to summarize the information. So summarize a journal article, summarize an assessment brief. For example, you can use it to provide an essay plan. So here is my essay title. How would I break this down in an essay? So what would I put in each paragraph, for example? For doing an initial search, like I said, so doing some research, finding some journal articles, and Karen will talk more about that later. You can use it for summarizing the research as well. So again, summarizing journal articles, or summarizing papers, for example, like government papers, policy briefings. As we know, those tend to be incredibly long, so it can help with that. And then in terms of improvements, we would say, so you could use it once you've got a draft of an essay, you could use it to suggest improvements, obviously not to do the improvements, but to suggest some improvements. Again, suggestions on your formatting or your structure. So for example, if you're writing a report, if you don't have headings in your report, it may suggest that. If you say, I'm writing a report, is this the correct format? And then suggestions on your academic voice, your tone, making sure that it is appropriate to the type of assessment that you're writing. So these are the kind of examples that we generally give to students in terms of where it is appropriate for them to use Gen AI. And like Erin said, it's basically an efficiency measure. So this can help them be more efficient with their time, which obviously, as we all know, students are pretty time poor nowadays. A lot of them will work while they're also studying, which means they have less time to dedicate to their study. I can see some chat in the chat about copyright, and Dora, you're absolutely right that that is something that needs to be considered and is something that should be that we should be speaking to students about. Exactly. So you do need to consider copyright if you are looking at uploading journal articles, for example. Similarly, you need to consider that even if you're uploading, for example, like assessment briefs, right? Because the copyright is generally owned by the institution. So there is a lot of things to consider there. You're right, Dora, in terms of copyright. And so then we would say, in terms of academic misconduct, where you can't use Gen AI, and again, this is very simplistic, but generally we would say it's content creation. So doing the actual writing, so creating the content, is obviously academic misconduct. Rewriting or editing it, so like I said, they can ask for suggestions, but the AI model should not be doing the rewriting or the editing for them. And then showing integrity. So it would be academic misconduct if they have used Gen AI, but they haven't acknowledged that they did that. So if they've used it in a perfectly legitimate way, so let's say to create an essay plan, but then they haven't acknowledged that, then that would still count as academic misconduct, because obviously it's unethical practice. You're not being transparent about that. Obviously presenting it as their own work would also be academic misconduct. Oh, that was it. I thought I had another point there, but apparently not. So again, this is fairly simplistic, but this is the kind of stuff that we are starting to talk to students more about. So like I said, finding that balance between the positive and the negative. And then obviously, while we are encouraging of them using AI, and I assume most of you are also similar, that your policies, your guidance are talking about how they can use it to help them to have those efficiencies, to have to save that time, to help them improve their academic practice. But obviously then there are things they also need to consider that are not necessarily positive. So hallucinations, we all know about this. AI is getting much better. There are way less hallucinations than there used to be, but there still are hallucinations, which not all students know about. Incorrect information as well. So not just hallucinations, but things that are just untrue a lot of the time. Misinformation. So things, again, that are not true or that are deliberately trying to mislead people. Obviously, if they're using it for research, generally the only things that are on there are things that are freely available. So that limits what they can access on there, which again, they don't necessarily consider a lot of the time. A lack of criticality. So as most of you will know, AIs are designed essentially to please us. So most of the time they will agree with us, they will try and please us, and they won't necessarily show that criticality that we expect generally in academic work. A A lot of it, they reinforce stereotypes, a lot of them. So again, that can be a concern and something that students need to be aware of. And that's obviously because Gen AI is based on humans and we are the ones that train it, and we all have bias and stereotypes. So it also has bias a lot of the time. And of course, there is an environmental impact of Gen AI, which a lot of the time, again, is not necessarily talked about. So Greenwich, we're very keen on sustainability. So again, we do think it's important to make students aware of the environmental impact of AI. And then obviously there's the possibility of exploitation as well. There's a lot of Gen AI models, again, have been based or trained by humans who essentially are working in really poor conditions and are being exploited. So again, that's a kind of ethical consideration for using AI. Donna, yes. So yeah, we do think that's an academic skill to be able to plan an essay and summarize documents. I completely agree, that is a skill. But also there's no reason why they can't use Gen AI to help them do that and help them to develop that skill. So if they have no idea how to structure an essay, for example, if we look at like a first year undergrad, a Gen AI can help them with that and help them learn how those paragraphs should be structured, right? How an essay should flow. And then the hope is that they will then be able to learn that themselves, right? So they can learn by example, essentially. So in the same way that sometimes we might provide them with an example of this is the type of paragraph structure you might do, essentially Gen AI is doing the same thing. So I would say for us, we would encourage students to use Gen AI if that's what they're going to use. But yeah, it absolutely should not be replacing the skills they should be learning. They should be using AI as a learning tool, not as something to replace their learning, is what I would say. Just a few examples. Again, I'm sure most of you know these, but so obviously Gen AI can provide incorrect references. It can provide partly correct ones. So quite often it will mash together like a journal article title and then a journal title. And both of those things exist. So the article title exists as an article and the journal exists as a journal, but that article is not within that journal, if you see what I mean. So I found that quite a lot, which is intensely frustrating. And again, students don't know that if they don't check the references. They can provide information from poor quality sources, of course, some of the time, because again, they're not using that criticality. A lot of the time they state opinion as fact, as in somebody else's opinion will be stated as fact. So again, that's where we need to show that criticality. And a lot of the time they give information without context as well. So again, things may be taken out of context and therefore may be incorrect or biased if they're taking out of a specific context. So again, these are just things that we try and make students aware of. I'm aware we're almost at time. So like I said, we try and talk about it as a positive way. So the ethical use of AI should be that you are being transparent, you're being critical, you're being careful of how you're using it. You can help train the AI, so correct biases or misconceptions that come up, challenge them. Use it within the guidance or the policies, and don't let it replace your voice. So you are still the person, or the students are still the person who should be writing their essays and giving their opinion and learning, you know, themselves. So don't let AI replace that, is what we would say. So we have a declaration form at Greenwich that students should be using. So any of your Greenwich students should be aware of this and using it. Again, I've linked to that. So that's if they've used Gen AI in any way, they should be declaring it. And that, again, is just showing that academic integrity and that transparency that we're looking for. And then occasionally they should also be referencing it. So if they're directly referring to it in their assignment, so they're quoting a definition, for example, rather than just they've used it to give an essay plan. So there's a difference there. But again, we do have referencing support for Gen AI. So again, I have put the link there. And then again, we would sometimes talk to students where we have time about trying to make sure that their prompts are efficient and effective. So being specific, use lots of details, specifying what they want. So don't just ask for journal articles, ask for academic journal articles. Ask them for not just an essay plan, but specify. So how many words is it? What year are you in? What's the title? And then specify what you do and don't want. So I want you to give me suggestions. I don't want you to change anything within the assessment, because again, that would be academic misconduct. So being very specific there. And then I've just, again, put a whole bunch of links there in terms of our guidance and policies. So like I said, I will share all of these slides with you so that you have them and you can make use of any of those links if they are helpful to you. Okay, so we're pretty much at the time for the break, but does anyone have any questions, comments, examples of how you are talking about it with students that you want to share quickly? If not, obviously we can come back to this in the discussion section at 12:15. I'd be very happy to revisit this then, because like I said, I'm very interested in what you're all doing in your institutions. We are finding a divide, Donna, yeah, within both staff and students, to be honest. So some students are very reluctant to go anywhere near AI. So we have Studiosity, which is an AI tool that's approved, but we even find some students are reluctant to use that because they just don't want to be anywhere near Gen AI, even if it's literally paid for by the university. And on the other flip side of that, a lot of them are just using it for everyday life all the time. And then it's the same with academic staff. So with academic staff, we find some of them, again, are using it themselves and are happy for their students to use it. And some of them are the opposite and really don't want their students to use it and don't use it themselves. And so part of our updated guidance is that we're actually providing a bit more structure for how academics can make it clear to students whether they want them to use AI or not within their assessments. And like I said, hopefully that will be coming out in the next few months, and then I'll be able to share that with all of you. Yeah, I think that's pretty common across the board, right? That some people are embracing it and some people are not. The opposite. Okay. Does anyone else have anything on this before we take a quick break? Okay. Oh yeah, okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. So they don't use it in the first year. So they kind of build a base level of skills first, essentially, and then they can use it. Ah, that's an that's an interesting way of doing it. I'm not sure if we have a concerted way of doing that. I think for ours, although I guess with yours, that's one tutor. Ours is like that, where it's essentially up to the individual academics. And yeah, exactly. It varies course to course, module to module, school to school, which obviously for us, when we are outside of that structure, is much more complicated. So I have to say, I find that somewhat frustrating at times. But this is the world we live in now. Okay, so shall we take a quick break? So 10 minutes. We'll come back for Karen to start at 5 past. Karen, is your sound working okay now?
It is.
Okay,
And it
good.
wasn't anything to do with the settings in Teams, but I have resolved it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's come back in 10 minutes then, and we will have Karen's session. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Hello.
Hello, how lovely it is to hear your voice.
Managed to get the board working, so it's a relief. I'm gonna assume everyone is back, but maybe somebody could wave or do a thumbs up or something to let us know, please. Lovely.
Excellent.
Thank you, Doro, Erin. I appreciate it. And Donna, thank you. Okay. Sharon, lovely. Okay, good. We see most people seem to be back, so we will assume we're here. So I will pass over to Karen in that case. So Karen works in the academic and digital skills team with me, and she has very kindly agreed to do a session around open source searching. Karen, I'll pass over to you and mute myself.
Thank you very much, Laura. So hopefully now you should be able to see my Menti. Although it says log in and give a code, I don't like the way that's working. I might unshare that and do it the old-fashioned way. Right, sorry, I tried a button I'd not used before and I don't like the way that worked, so I'm going to do it the way I normally do it. And share my screen with you. No, it's absolutely insisting on and doing it this way. So I don't know whether it's asking me to log in or you to log in. Laura, what are you seeing on your screen?
I can't see anything apart from you right now. I did see something there, but yeah, mine is saying at the top, content is being shared for collaboration. To access it, join the meeting from your personal device or something. But that's, there's nothing
and
to
someone
see.
has just said that, but equally someone has just answered the question. Because what I tried to do was my normal thing. I'm not having a tech day or a hangover too. But anyway, that's another story. But I've asked it to share my screen as I always do. And every time I try to do it, it says, we're going to do this present in Teams thing, but then it's come up with this screen. And I don't know whether it wants me to log in, but that means I then have to show my ID on there, unless it just wants me to share the code with you all for logging into it, which would be...
Oh, so Doro says she's been able to access it.
By doing what?
I can't see anything, but that might just be mean.
Right,
Can anyone else see the Mentimeter?
People don't, it's not giving me a code to give people, and it says log in and people might not have it, so that's a problem. Right, let me see if I can pull up the QR code. No, it's not giving me the QR code either. This is a totally new feature that's just started today.
So Doro can see it.
Yeah, Dora, do you have your own Mentimeter account?
I'm not sure if anyone else can see it. I can't see anything.
You do have a Mentimeter account because I've shared this with you.
Yeah, I just can't see it on the screen though. I can't see anything on the shared screen. Donna says she can use it okay.
Okay, I'm trying something else. No, that's the same thing. Oh, life's just...
Maybe for me it's just because I'm on the weird screen. So let me try joining with my laptop as well and seeing whether that helps.
Well, there are people answering the questions, so it might be better.
Oh yeah, so I can see it if I join on my laptop.
But how did you join?
I just added my laptop to the Teams and then it's just come up on the screen.
Oh, okay. Sharon is kindly typing something.
So maybe it is, yeah, so Dora, I can see the same as you. So maybe it is working. now. It just wasn't working for me because I'm on the weird Teams thing.
Okay, someone has shown me a screenshot which looks to be okay. Why don't they warn us when they're going to change this?
I know, I don't know why they always change it whenever you don't want them to.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and there's 11 on the call. Because I suppose if you don't try and use it, then you can't see all the slides.
Yeah, so Sharon says that she needs the code.
But it's not giving me a code.
Yeah, mine is not asking me for a code. Mine's just showing me. Same as Doro.
Normally I can put the QR code up or quote the number, but it's not giving me a number. And in fact, it's not showing it in presenter view for me, actually. I've seen the slides as well.
Can everyone else see what Doro can see, what Doro shared in the chat? So on your screen, you should have what the screenshot that Doro's got in the chat, and that should allow you on the right hand side to just contribute there. Okay, so Sharon can see the answers but not participate. Donna, Erin, Doro can all, Sebastian can all do it. Okay, so for some reason, Sharon, you're just unlucky. It would have been. You could try joining on another device, Sharon. That's what I just did, and then it started working for me.
Let's see what Jacob's saying. You can talk out loud at this point if you want, if it's quicker.
Yep, I can see it. It's fine.
Okay, all right then. All right, well, as you can all see it, we will just go for it. Fortunately, I have this little interim question about what's your librarian's superpower? Persuasion, intelligence, patience, intelligence. You wouldn't be a librarian if you weren't intelligent. I think we're all generally, let's say low-level polymaths. We're not like those really super people that you hear about that were good at absolutely, top achievers in everything. But if we couldn't adapt ourselves to all subjects, we would be struggling. So we definitely got intelligence. Time control, oh yes. Although some of that is from external forces, I think, isn't it? How to silence the room. Yes, nowadays if you say shh, people say you're being rude. Anyway, thank you for your input. I'm glad it's working, even though it's not working in the way that I would traditionally expect. So now we will talk about open source materials, and I will do a bit about Gen A as well. Apologies if I'm looking away when I'm talking, but the actual presentation is showing on another screen. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at finding open access resources. We're going to look at our library guides, and I know some of you have library guides, but not necessarily all of you. I'm going to look at key open access directories. There's so much free material out there. I've narrowed it down to the key ones. Google Scholar and the Internet Archive. I'm sure many of you are using this, and you are welcome to make comments in the chat and say if there's a way that you're using it that perhaps I don't use it. But these are the things we'll talk about. And the second part will be more focusing on using AI for research. So we are seeing the slides, yeah? You should be now on part 1, finding open access research.
Mine is still just showing the first slide.
Yeah, see, that's no good. It's not showing the slides. Ah, right. And I do present in Teams. Start sharing. No, and it's still doing the same thing.
That's still the first slide for me.
Yep, okay. I am going to
I'm just going to jump in to defend Karen here to say it normally does not do this. For some reason, it's clearly updated and it's like now absolutely
doing what it is not supposed to do.
Right, I can get preview mode, which means you have two things on the screen, or I can go to present in Teams, which I think is going to take us back out. Yeah, so
maybe click on where it says launch it now, Karen, on the screen. Like, so down in the middle of the screen, it says launch it now.
no. Okay, so the best way for me to do this, so you can actually see it, is to do preview mode, which means you are going to see the two versions, but at least we're going to see things then. I wish they'd tell us when this, just to say, I am the one who in this library who loves Mentimeter and is always trying new things on it. And this is the first time this has happened. So if you don't mind, we'll work with this. Can you see it okay now? It should say part 1, finding open access resources.
Yeah, I can do that now.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that, but it's a workaround. Oh, except for it's not letting me move on to the next screen. Or will it? Ah, it does. Brilliant. Okay, so I thought I'll start with our LibGuides, because actually, although I'm going to tell you about various things, we do have fairly comprehensive details about open access research. Some of it's created by colleagues, some of it's not. And just like I'm guessing most of you might have LibGuides, so if you put LibGuides Greenwich as a search, you will find us. The only thing is you have to be careful, because sometimes the public library also has a LibGuides Greenwich, so you've got to be just careful of that. But you will find our LibGuides. And we have actually written one, and I will just go to the full screen. Oh, that looked different as well. Opening link. Come on. Open link. Oh, this is just not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Right. I will manually open it. Right, so that's fine. You just get to see it happening. You can now see I'm on the web, yeah? Or are you still looking at Mentimeter? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so this is our university LibGuides. Let's just go home page. I don't know what's defaulted to that one. And under, well, you can just go to here and do open access. And you will find our open access resources. And you can see there's various blurb, and then there's someone's done something about free architecture ones, books, finding worldwide theses, free general legal resources. So someone has already done quite a bit of work, so you might want to look at that. Equally, if I go to back to the LibGuides homepage, you can go to the subject section, and some they vary in their details about open access. But if I just take the computing one, for example, you will see this stuff. There's information there about partners and overseas students, and a summary of what resources you can use depending on how you subscribe to our university. But the other area to look at is subject-specific content. All our key subject databases for that subject is under subject databases. The more specific stuff is actually under subject-specific, and you can see it says free index and open sources. There are some paid stuff, but again, external talks, Gresham lectures, websites, and live news feeds from the BBC. So there's all stuff that, you know, that's the point of LibGuides. We don't have to hide behind our own university's wall, so they're public facing. So if you see something you like, you can just link to it so that others can use it. And I don't have a problem with that myself. So the other thing that's worth mentioning, I'll just go back to the main LibGuides thing, is that we also have data sets for your research, which isn't covered in the main talk that I've done. But this one, as you can see my pictures on there, I'm the one who created this. It was a labour of love. And it doesn't actually match the subjects that we cover. It's done in a much more general nature, and there's even a my subject isn't listed. And it gives you advice on where to look, because it's very hard to, you'd just be repeating yourself if you tried to do it on a school by school basis. So it's much more general, but the vast majority of this stuff is free stuff globally on data sets. So if you have students who need data sets, it's on there. The only one thing I haven't done is added APIs, because a lot of students won't even know what APIs are, but computing students will, and they'll head straight to there, which takes out a lot of the work of searching, which they still need to do. So I've made a point of discussed it with the data science academics. So I don't link direct anyone straight to APIs. Anyway, I'll go back now, and we'll skip on a few. These are just slides, because I'll send you the slides. So I'm just basically showing you what I've just mentioned. And then we'll go on to the global repositories. Now, it may be that you all use these. It may be that you're new and you haven't heard of them. If people could let me know, you know, just say whether you recognize them all or not. If there's any that you don't know you particularly like me to focus on at this point. No? Okay. All right. So basically, a lot of them start with DOA, which is just Directory of Open Access. And we've got one that looks specifically at books, another at journals, one at dissertations and theses, and another one just looks at all the repositories that have stuff in it. And then you have Oyster, which is a discovery tool that will look at for everything. It is a discovery tool as opposed to these other ones, which are very focused in their outlook. So you might want to try some of these. And now it's opening. So this is Dope, and this does books. You're never going to get the same hits as you would, obviously, on your own quality products, but there's usually something in there that you can find. Sometimes it is in another language, sometimes in English, but obviously nowadays you can get things translated, and these are open access anyway. So if it wasn't a foreign language and you wanted to share it with AI, it's in the public knowledge. It's not like sharing a journal article behind a paywall, which of course would be totally illegal and against copyright. So I'm just going to put in here Japanese theatre. Funny enough, it wants a capital J for Japanese. And just press search. And you can see straight away there are 7. One about using it to talk about in Fukushima, looking at theatre and dance as well. There's a lot of these are based on teaching with theatre. So if that was something you were interested in, but you see again, there are loads of filters here, just as you would expect. I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs. And you can even sort by license as well. So that's Dope. Then we've got Doge. Now, the interesting thing about Doge, if you haven't used that one, let me just tell it I'm human. is if you don't, I was using this earlier and I don't think that button was working. So I was searching there. So sometimes you might just need to go to search. Or maybe it was just me being silly. I tried to use different searches each time just to give you, because you'll all be doing different subjects, but you can see there's 195 journal articles relating to cultural events marketing that are all open access. And of course, if they are in foreign language, sometimes when you open them, it will actually translate on the screen. Sometimes you will need to use AI to do it. Dissertation and thesis. This one actually, I have looked at one, and it was one of those where it did actually say, would you like to translate this from the Italian? But again, it really does depend on where it's come from, because some of these come from quite small institutions as well as the bigger ones as well. So can't remember what I used to find this. Construction and green regulations, because of course now everything in construction is about green infrastructure or even blue infrastructure as well nowadays, particularly the urban landscaping part. And you can see that we've got Hong Kong University, Nanyang, Toronto. They're coming from all over the place. And usually you can just click straight on them and they will open up. Okay. Oyster, I find, is the one that is best just left for when you want to do a wider search for more materials. But I do find it's not. Yes, Open Door. Sorry, yes, it is. Yeah. Someone just said it's Open Door, not door, but you are correct. Sorry, I forgot to put that because I was doing it. And I was going to leave you for 5 minutes to try this, a few of these in a second. So for Oyster, I'm just going to put Puppet Theatre in Education. So a similar search to a previous one. And I found, depending on your questions, it's usually just as well to do it as a simple search with this one. The advanced search can get a bit messy, but you can see that the great thing about this one is it pulls up visual materials and computer files and images, which the others don't. So, obviously you try whichever suits you best. And that's just a screenshot. What I have done for you is put a slide actually comparing what content type they have, their strengths, their limitations and best use cases for you to decide which one's best to use in any scenario. So hopefully that will be useful. And as I say, I will send you the slides. So if you want now would be a good time to go and try these. And we'll just take 5 minutes, have a quick play around, and you can say, I'm sure you've got things you've been wanting to search. Have a go at them, and you can just put now in open access sources, what one you used and what you thought of its functionality. Sorry, I just realised I've muted myself. For some reason, the answers aren't coming up. One of the new features that Mentimeter introduced a few weeks ago was that you can hide the open questions until you've had a few responses, because that encourages students to think for themselves rather than for waiting for one or two questions to come. So, you know, there's a good pedagogy behind it. But I've been finding that it's not showing me the answers. And in fact, this one says 0 out of 3 responded. It's just gone up from 2 to 3. And we can't see anything on the screen at all. Can you see the answers on your screen? No. Okay, so maybe if some people want to put in chat what they... Sebastian is saying something brilliant. This is a librarian's nightmare, isn't it? You've been using a technology for years, works fine, and you're there with doing a session with your peers and everything goes wrong that can go wrong. But 1 of 7 responded. This is bizarre. It looks like people are having to log into it now, which might not help. Testing. Right, yes, I've got that. Yay! I think it's because I managed to find a screen with a QR code on, although people have to know. Brilliant. I presume didn't know about this was the open access resources. Oyster's new to you, yeah. Yay, we're cooking with gas now. It's all starting to work. Any younger people on this session won't know what I mean by cooking with gas, but there you go. Ah. Interesting, it still says 3 of 7 have responded, and there's actually 5 of you on here. So it's obviously really not working. Okay, so we've got some responses, and there are things here that I have told you that are new for you today. So I think I've earned my money for today. We will move on. I also want to mention Google Scholar because, you know, we've got Cyverse and the Web of Science one and things like that. But students, just like they don't find our databases very helpful, don't always find these very helpful for anything. So I've taken the approach of saying, if you found particularly if they're struggling, if you found a really nice article that you like, put the article title into Google Scholar and use the cited by to identify new articles. Now, of course, if you have the databases that supply those articles, that's brilliant. If you have, obviously, there's also a lot of open access that Google Scholar provides as well. But if not, then they may have to just either try Doge or something like that to find it. Otherwise, they will need to obviously order it using your document delivery request, British Library request, wherever you go do it for. But Google Scholar is really good to actually follow forward instead of the old way of doing it, following backwards to the references. We now see the newer stuff, and that's obviously brilliant. Well, yes, it is. There are a lot of licensed materials, but like I say, you should mostly have hopefully a British Library request, document delivery. So if it's important, then you can get it for you. The Internet Archive, again, is a really good one. And it did start back as the Wayback Machine, just collecting everything that was on the web when it really started to explode. And obviously, you do worry about security on these things, but they have actually done a lot of updates on this security. They did have a cyber attack in 2024, and they've now worked with other companies to improve their systems, which is really important to them, of course, because not really wanting to get into politics, but since Trump has decided to close so many departments and the paperwork was all going in the bins, they've they've taken a lot of this on board and are digitising it for posterity. So it's really important to them that they have a secure site. And students can, well, anybody can use it, but you can actually borrow books. And for myself, one of the subjects I cover is architecture. And if you know anything about architecture, they do like a lot of very old books, a lot of philosophy books and stuff. And you just can't buy them anymore. And they may not have been used enough and they've been withdrawn at some point. So nowadays, I'm always checking Internet Archive to see if their students can get it for that, and then they can put that link into their reading lists. But it has so much more on there. I mean, if you do marketing and stuff, there's a really great section on early American TV adverts, including a story about Mr. Prune, which is hilarious. You can actually go down a bit of a rabbit hole with that one, actually. But as you can see, it's got 50 million books, 16 million films, 13 million other recordings, 4.1 million TV. It's got loads of stuff. So it's a really great place to go and find all kinds of media. I've got some of my sound lecturers using the sound library there, not just recordings of people, but also just of different sounds and things used for film and stuff as well. And they've actually just been promoting early computer codes to hack computer systems. I mean, our computer systems can beat these things now, but they're now putting it there as training materials for cybersecurity people. So that's all about the open access resources. I hope I think it's been helpful. I can see that some people have found new things. I can see time's moving on. So now I'm going to talk about using Gen AI. And I'm particularly focusing on talk courses rather than research, because that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down to. So before we start, I just always bear in mind that AI is biased. It hallucinates, it produces fake content, and it doesn't focus on currency unless you state it. And I don't think students always think to state that. So we need to really engage our users and, have to, thank you. Users, encourage them to question what they're being told and corroborate with other sources. And also how to look at links and identify whether they're trustworthy sources. So many people don't realise that, if it's got .org or edu or .ac or .gov, then they're usually good sources, where if you start seeing independent websites or .co or .com, then obviously they're dodgy. So it's really important that we educate them around that kind of thing. Now, there's lots of ways you can use it. Students can actually use it to produce a working title for their research. And that's just, there's different ways of thinking of these things. You think they should be able to think of this themselves. Students, of course, do know what they want to talk about, but sometimes they're just not getting out there. Or often when I get students, they're the ones who know what they want to do. But when you say, what is it you want to research? The level of language they use is based on the sort of titles of courses or modules within a degree. They're not actually yet into their mindset of being more specific, because they're searching for journal articles. So, you can actually, this is not going to hurt to actually do this. Or, I want to write a graduate dissertation about labels and branding. And, obviously, you can try and tease more out of them, but they, it might be helpful to ask for suggestions. And the great thing is, we talk about hallucinations and things. You can see here we have a guess the word scenario where AI has pulled up complete gobbledygook. I don't even know if it is another language or not, or whether it's just created a whole load of random characters. But it can actually be quite useful for the librarian. You might not want to do it face to face. It might be a bit embarrassing, but you could do, or if you're online, you might find that a student approaches you on a topic you're just not familiar with. Again, you can try and pry stuff out, but sometimes, particularly if you haven't got a lot of time, you can just get Gen AI to rephrase the title, because then you might find alternative descriptions that resonates with you as a librarian, particularly if you've just taken over a new subject that you don't understand. I mean, I've got a science background and I've just changed to design, which for me is a whole different world. So what I thought you might want to do is actually try, this is quite a vague, this is quite a long sentence that someone gave me, and actually just have a go on AI now and see what suggestions it comes up with for alternative alternative words. Oh, losing my rhyme. Yeah, just get it to rephrase it in a way that will give you, you know, decent keywords and that resonates with yourself. I'm not saying that you should use these, and there are more traditional ways. But people are using AI, and to be frank, quite often it's quicker when you're in a, you know, you've got a very short time span to see someone. It is a quicker way of doing it. But you know, if you've got the time and you want to go the longer way and use Google and Wikipedia, that's all okay too. But this just gives you sort of a way of getting multiple different variations on a theme, just to pull the keywords out. I mean, to be honest, someone was saying I tried on a new subject, I tried to avoid AI. I do learn a lot and I read a lot, but then there's sometimes you get to the point where you realise that it's too many, everyone's saying things in a slightly different way, and you just want to narrow down on what that is. Then occasionally, then I would use that just to make sure, but no one's responding. And Gen AI's is in. Oh wait. Yeah, you could do that. You could just do it a bit more and say rephrase as keywords, just to pull out the keywords as well. But actually, I think that is a nicer way of saying it than the way the question was set for the students. Sometimes it's semantics, isn't it, and how much you understand the question, because, you know, you can talk to one person and they understand you completely, and you could say the same thing to another person. It's like you're on a different planet. So sometimes it is quite useful to have these tools. Yeah, I go back to the other screen. Oh no, I don't have this on the next one. So what I did is oh no, I haven't got the answers on there. It was I mean, it just gave me a whole load of keywords about it just basically split it up into the keywords so that we could search and use you know, alternatives for it. Thank you for whoever did that. So yes, one of the things we're saying is that we can use it for search strings. So I put in this packaging, labeling, branding, the influence on consumer behavior, and you can see it's done a nice search string, because actually this is where the students really do fall over with search strings. Obviously, when you've got something like the EBSCO products, they do all the or statements for you. But if you don't have EBSCO, then you won't know to do this. And you can, but it's also a good point then, of course, to emphasize that all the ors and ands should be in capital letters, but just to show them the kind of things they are doing. Obviously, in a lesson, you would take the time and draw it all out from, but particularly when you're in a busy, you know, you've got a one-to-one and you've only got a certain amount of time, these things can be helpful and show them how they can help themselves. I mean, there's one of my points of views is that I'm really good. I can really do well at writing something, but if I don't have a framework, that's where I get stuck. Once I got a framework, I can go. Different people have different strengths to their skills. So this is why if I can see someone struggling, and that's the barrier from them actually getting on doing their work, but they really do know the subject, this is why I would then do something like this. Right, moving on to referencing. People do already use tools for referencing. Obviously, there's Mendeley, there's MyBib and BibRef and RefWorks and stuff like that. But to be honest, there's very little difference with the AI. It's using Gen AI as well. Sorry, I should specify. There's still actually exactly the same problems with it. And the important thing is to state at the start, it is, you know, you use it, but you've still got to test the outputs, outputs, sorry. And I'm always saying to students, you can use any referencing tool you want, but it's the problem is that where you're getting the information from, the citation, they don't always give it as accurately as they could. I can remember much frustration using Mendeley. When I actually brought the document over and looked at the reference, it was often incomplete and I would have to spend time doing each one. And that's the same for many. So regardless of what it is, there's always, of course, this issue of it might be the wrong citation style. In fact, JSTOR doesn't even do Harvard. So I just tell students they're all essentially the same, just in a different order. So download that and then change it. So whilst I'm saying you can use these tools, what I'm also saying is it doesn't matter which one you use. At the end of the day, students still need to learn how to reference to make sure that it's all correct and risk inaccurate references. So I've used tried AI on this, and so I'm struggling. I've not been well this morning. I don't know why. I'm starting to overheat. I have used Copilot to try out the referencing system, and I said, tell me how to reference a book. Yeah, sorry. Yes, Doro?
The slide before.
Yeah.
You say the last, keep your library organized.
Yeah, that's their personal library of references.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Now you mention it, that would have been a better way to put it. So anyway, one of the things I found that was interesting, of course, is that Cite Them Right, who we use as our standard for referencing, changed to edition 13 recently. So we've got Copilot within the work environment, so it doesn't give all our stuff outside. And I asked it to cite a book to see if it picked up the fact that you no longer use the place of publication in a reference for Harvard referencing. And it gave me, and I'd said, do it as Cite Them Right would. And so I said, but you've used the wrong edition. We're now in edition 13. And it said to me, oh, that's a good point. I hadn't, I didn't think to do that. And one of the things I found out by having a discussion with it is that if there's when it's in the protected, like Office 365 mode, it doesn't remember anything. It will store chats and you can delete them anytime, but it won't remember things about you unless you tell it to. So one of the things I found was that, so what I would do is say, remember for future encounters that I want to refer to the 13th edition of Cite Them Right. And it will do that for you. And so you've got all those other tools, but actually you can just run run a reference list through this, and it will put them all in alphabetical order, and it will do it according to Cite Them Right version 13. I did ask it what it could and couldn't do, and it said it can't account for variations specified by academics. And that's, of course, something we should always be saying is, even though we tell academics that we use Cite Them Right as our standard, and it is now a global standard because so many universities around the world have Cite Them Right, there is always the odd one who has their own personal preferences. I know mathematicians, for some reason, they use Harvard, but they like author's first name first. So, of course, we're still having to remind them of that. And it does say it doesn't produce Cite Them Right verbatim. It accurately applies the rules. And for a very obscure format, e.g. niche archival materials, I may approximate based on CTR principles. And it says, note that one applies to humans too. And I'm sure, just like us, you've had that occasion where some student or an academic has come up with some really bizarre kind of material that they need to reference. And we as a group of librarians have sat there scratching our head, trying to work out which model most closely resembles it. And then what I usually do then is then report that to Cite Them Right team so that they can then add that to their never-ending list of how to cite materials. And of course, it doesn't go behind paywalls to check you've given the right information. So basically what I'm saying is you could use Gen AI just as much as you could use any of the other tools. And if you tell it what system you're using, sometimes it can do a better job than those other tools and quicker, but you do have to be aware that you're using the right edition and everything first. And I'm not saying that and obviously I'm not selling you these things, I'm just telling you things I've tried and tested because I'm a curious person. Of course, the most important point about this is that they should declare the use of AI, even if it isn't for the main body of their work. So they should still say that they've used it to help them create a reference list. They should use it to say that they've helped it to refine their search query and stuff. It doesn't mean they're going to get marked down on it. It's just acknowledging that AI has been used. And someone mentioned elicit earlier. I wasn't going to mention elicit because I did do a couple of slides on for research level, but as we're mostly doing talk course students, then I thought I would miss that out. But I did try elicit. It promotes itself as the most accurate AI product for scientific research. It was awful. It gave a summary of 10 papers from 1910 to 2010. They were abstracts only and no full reference to locate it. A summary was produced for all of the papers, which was 2 paragraphs long. And one of the things you can do, I've tried things like is ask your I shouldn't say chatbots. Chatbots are slightly different, but ask Gen AI which tools it thinks are better for which jobs. Right, so this is the point where well, we're pretty much at time, but is there any questions or statements? I know some of this is very general, but I'm very aware also that you might have children, students rather, who are international and like English isn't their first. So these are other tools that will help them if English is not their first, because we have a very broad range of students at our university. So, and different accessibility issues, which I probably should have said from the first place to explain why I've done such a broad ranging thing and why some of these you might not recommend to your average student, but there are times when it is really useful to use these with people who might struggle for whatever reason. Is there any questions or something anyone wants to say? No? Okay. Well, if there's anything you want to, I've left the survey form up there. Obviously, that'll be just to guide me into. You can comment there about things that I missed that you would have liked mentioned, or anything like that. It's always helpful to have some constructive criticism so that we can improve on this. Is there anything you want to say now, Laura?
No, just to say thank you very much, Karen. That was really useful and very interesting. I know I learned some stuff, so hopefully everybody else did as well. So thank you very much. If nobody has any questions for Karen, or if nobody wants to share anything about any OA resources that you might use, for example, then thank you very much. We will pause there for a break in that case, and just say thank you to Karen. So shall we take a 10-minute break, and then the rest of us can come back and we will move into the final section of today's program, which is open discussion. So I will put in the chat just some suggestions for topics we can talk about after the break, but obviously I'm very happy to be led by you if there's anything that anyone wants to ask questions about, share good practice, get advice on, etc., then that would be great. Okay.
While everyone's having their break, I will download the slides and try and copy them into the chat.
Yeah, I think I tried and I couldn't upload anything to the chat, but if we can't, then I have got access to Karen's slides, so I will email all the slides around after today so that you can all have access to them.
Yeah.
So Dora, you should be able to just access the feedback without logging in, right, Karen? Or you might need to make it so that they can access it if they're not using a Greenwich email address, if you haven't already.
I will double check that. I thought I had, but I will double check it.
Yeah, it might be.
Technology
I'm
wise,
logged in with my institutional email address. I got
Sorry, Dora. It might be. I think quite often it defaults to like Greenwich users, which is quite irritating. So, Karen will have a look at that now, and we can come back to it. Okay. In the meantime,
here we go. Yeah, I've got it. Anyone can respond.
Yeah.
Right. I will copy that link again.
Okay, there we go. So you should be able to access that now. Thank you. And I will see you all in 10 minutes for us to start the final bit. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I am back. I'm hoping some other people are back. Somebody could give me a sign of life. Thank you, Erin. I appreciate it. So what's the problem, isn't it, with online meetings? So you take a break and then you're like, are people back, or am I just literally talking into the void right now? Thank
I
you,
mean,
Donna.
talking into the void sums up my life, so you know.
Yeah, me too, a lot of the time.
Tell me about it.
I'm glad it's not just me. It's not nice to know we all have the same experience, even if it is that is somewhat
I
depressing.
mean, when you're talking to someone, sometimes it feels like I am literally talking into a void here, aren't I?
Yeah. Does feel like that, doesn't it?
It can do, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not talking into the void today, so that's good to know. I know there's not many of us left. Some people have had to leave for other commitments. And I know a few people sent apologies that they couldn't attend because of other commitments. But even if we're only a small group, I'm hoping this will be helpful. So I've left this section essentially up to you guys, because I feel like I determined the first 2 hours where I kind of determined what topics we should talk about, of things that are, you know, cropping up and kind of important for us at Greenwich. But this bit is essentially up to you. So I have put some suggestions in the chat just as a kind of starting point of where people might want to ask questions or discuss things that they've been doing or learn what other people are doing. But obviously, I'm very happy for us to completely ignore those suggestions and talk about something you would rather talk about instead. So I know last year we had some great examples of where people had done like new things with student engagement. So where they've done new kind of little initiatives or events in the library that they were getting loads of student engagement with. And those were really interesting to hear as examples of how to get students more invested in the library and the library service. So anything like that, again, would be really good. Any examples of things you've done that you're proud of, that you want to share, that's been kind of something new or different this year, or any problems that you are facing, because obviously there's a lot of challenges across all of education at the minute. So yeah, and this I think is a good space to be able to kind of talk about that. It's always nice to just know that other people have the same problems that you do. Donna.
Hello. Thank you so much for a really interesting morning, Laura, and everybody else. Well, there are like lots of possible things to consider, so thank you for your suggestions. I wondered, something I read about yesterday was a study that found students were using Gen AI because it was more validating than their tutors.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if that was something people had experienced, and whether, I don't know, I was a bit surprised that was a reason for people using it, that it was, you know, basically guaranteed to be nice to them.
Yeah,
I suppose it's always available as well.
I mean, that is fascinating. I mean, I haven't read that. Although if you have the article and you want to share it, I'd be interested to see it.
Yeah.
If you have a link to it, that'd be great. Thank you. But I can see where that's coming from, to be honest. So there's a lot of kind of linking in with this. Although on a slightly more depressing note, sorry. There's also a lot of research, I don't know if anyone else has seen this, increasingly around, I think they're calling it like AI psychosis. And essentially it's what you're saying, Donna, where it's people are using AI because essentially it validates them, it agrees with them, it makes them feel you know, like that they're right and that they have a friend in AI, essentially. But then it's leading to essentially mental health concerns of where people are becoming very invested in a kind of relationship with an AI agent, which obviously can then have concerns because it's not a person, it's not actually your friend. And like you say, it is kind of just designed to give you that kind of that validation almost, which is not really what is healthy, I guess, at least not entirely. So I think that's interesting though, that specifically on an academic bent that they are looking at it as like essentially they're nicer, like AI is nicer than my tutors or my academics. Slightly worrying for the tutors and the academics, isn't it? But also it's not really their job to be nice, not entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wonder if that's also something that students need to understand. Does anyone else want to come in on this? Yeah, Sebastian, you're right. There have been a lot of cases as well, like you say, where people are using it as a therapist. I mean, I've heard examples of where AI has encouraged suicide, which obviously is appalling and very worrying. So I think there is very much it's a slippery slope, right, to go down. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Any ways in which we might help to counteract this, I guess, if this is something that is becoming more common, particularly within academia? You know, is this something we need to look at if it's going to essentially push them away from the staff who work in universities? Or indeed in all educational institutions?
I think one of the things that I'm seeing where I am, so I work at Plumpton College, which is sort of a combination. So we have students from the ages of 14 up to adults. And what we've really noticed is, particularly with the younger cohorts in particular, the level of engagement with tutors is dropping, and the level of reliance on AI is increasing. And I think that that's something that's going to continue, and we'll probably see it sort of continue into sort of higher age groups in particular, as the reliance on AI and stuff sort of continues to grow throughout sort of teenage years, and they become more reliant on it. But it's something that we're definitely seeing with our younger cohorts in particular, and that sort of translates not only into sort of a lack of engagement within the classroom, but also just a lack of engagement in general, lack of engagement with sort of what we would consider to be sort of essential resources for learning. They just don't have that, and they don't have a willingness to use those resources. And basically, if it isn't available very, very quickly on their phones and isn't available via AI, they're just not willing to do it. One of the examples I can give is that we recently, obviously, it was exam periods, exam season. And I've recently started at Plumpton. I've been there for a few months. One of the first things I did was to set up a number of workshops about sort of revising for exams, how to prepare for exams, those kinds of things. And I set up a number of sessions during the week that people could sign up to, and sort of encourage teachers and tutors to, you know, sign students up. And I had no one come to any of the group workshops, like zero engagement. I had some one-to-one sessions, which were set up through sort of student services with students who had particular learning difficulties, but there was zero engagement. And so I went around sort of speaking with some of the students who sort of would come into the library, or, you know, I was also one of the marshals for the exams, and I asked them about it. And I said, oh, you know, is there a reason you didn't want to come? And they said, oh, no, I can find everything that I need online, so I don't need anyone to tell me what it is that I need to learn. I just look for it online. I just look for it. I'll ask ChatGPT and it will tell me.
Yeah, I think that's like you say, becoming increasingly common. I mean, that's really interesting to me that you're finding it much more in the younger age groups. Of course, for me at Greenwich, we really only deal with sort of 18 and up. So it's really interesting that because presumably, obviously, if it's from the younger age groups as they age, that makes it more and more prevalent, of course. So yeah, I suppose for a lot of us where we're dealing with the sort of older students, you know, post 16, I guess the question is exactly, is this, will it be a matter of trying to undo those bad habits by the time they
I
get
think
to
it's
us?
certainly something we need to be sort of aware of, and something we probably need to sort of plan for as well. I mean, you know, if we're, because I used to work at University of Sussex, and I was there before I came to Plumpton, so I've got the experience of dealing both with sort of higher education and FE. And you know, when I was in my last sort of year of teaching at Sussex, I did see it, you know, particularly with the foundation and the first year undergrads that I was teaching, that there was a higher, you know, level of lack of engagement than in the previous years when I was teaching. And also the same thing between my foundation and first year students compared with my second and third year students. There was a really, really big difference in the kind of engagement, and also just the general understanding and knowledge of how to sort of search for sources, how to research, how to do things, even just, you know, how to structure an essay. You know, that was really, really lacking in my foundation and first years, and I almost had to teach them from scratch. And so that's something that, you know, we're trying to push at Plumpton, particularly with the FE and those who want to go on to sort of do further study. It's something that we're really, really trying to push. But it's also difficult where I am, because Plumpton College is sort of primarily sort of land-based education, sort of agriculture, horticulture, that kind of thing. So having sort of the sort of more traditional academic skills, a lot of the students don't see it as necessary, because a lot of what they're doing, a lot of what they want to work in is practical. So trying to get them to engage with the academic skills, which they do need in order to pass their courses, it's an extra layer of difficulty that we have. And, you know, if they can sort of cut corners by using AI and then sort of focus on the practical, which is what they're interested in, what they want to do, then that's obviously what they're going to do as well.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because of course, AI does help you to cut the corners in a way. It helps you to be more efficient, right? And I mean, I certainly use it in my work sometimes to save me time in doing certain things. So it's absolutely a positive, but the problem being, of course, like you say, Erin, you don't want that over reliance on it, because they still need to be able to do things themselves. But you're right, Donna. Yeah, we find that as well a lot of the time, that students are embarrassed about asking questions, or admitting that they are uncertain about something, or that their skills are lacking in a certain way. And that's absolutely like a problem across the board, I would say. I mean, does anyone have any strategies of how they try and deal with that? So any examples of how you would try to, I don't know, make students aware of it being a more sort of welcoming environment and non-judgmental, or how you would try and encourage them to kind of have the confidence to ask those questions, I guess. Erin?
So one of the things that I'm very open, and I'm not lying when I tell them this. So a lot of the students that we have at Plumpton, we have a very high percentage that have learning difficulties and that have additional needs and just do not engage well with sort of more traditional academia. And one of the things that I say to them is, I failed high school 3 times. So I grew up in Australia. I failed high school 3 times, and I did fail high school 3 times. And I said to them, I failed high school 3 times. I said, I've just submitted my PhD. And they look at me and they're like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, okay. It was really, really tough. And I understand, you know, when you're doing secondary school and when you're doing like further education and stuff, it's really difficult to engage. I said, but what you've got to realize is that there's no stupid questions. Find 1 or 2 people, you know, even if it's just one person that you trust, that you can talk to and you can ask questions of. Rely on that person. They're there to help you. And also understand that even if things don't work out exactly the way that you want them to now, so if you don't pass your exams or whatever, it's not the end of the road. It is not the end of your life. And I think that that's something that a lot of students are afraid of is that if they fail now, if they show that they don't have that understanding, then they're going to be labeled as like stupid, or they're going to feel like they're stupid, and that's going to be the end of the road. And I say to them, it's not the end of the road. You know, even if you don't get the results and you don't succeed in the way, or you don't succeed right now, it doesn't mean that every door is closed to you. And, you know, I've had some students who've said to me, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that, you know, you could fail, but still continue to succeed later. I'm like, yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. It's not the end of the road. And I think as long as we really push that as much as possible and push that sort of encouragement that, you know, yeah, you may not get the results that you want, you may not pass your exams, but it doesn't mean that every door is closed to you. And, you know, we can do whatever we can to help you with that. Even if we only manage to reach 1 or 2 students, that's still 1 or 2 students who wouldn't previously have been reached, and they wouldn't have continued. And I sort of see that as a success, you know, and understanding that we as educators and support staff, we're not going to be able to help every student succeed, but even if we just help 1 or 2, we've done our job.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of the time we do work better on that kind of individual basis, right? Or at least the students appreciate that kind of individual support a lot more. So it does end up being kind of the smaller numbers, I guess. And I guess a lot of that is feeding into where they're using the Gen AI, is where obviously Gen AI is not a person, and it's faceless and nameless.
And it doesn't judge. It doesn't
exactly,
judge
and therefore I guess they think, you know, a human may judge, but Gen AI won't. And that's kind of maybe where they're turning to it as well, to help them with that, where they don't have the confidence to ask a person. Which, you know, it's great that they have that, obviously, and they can have that kind of safe space. But again, it just comes back to that over-reliance, I think. So does anyone else have anything that they would do? So any like strategies you might have that you use, like Erin does, with kind of talking to students about her personal experience and how that means, you know, failure does not mean the end of the road kind of thing. Does anyone else have anything that you are willing to share, or any kind of areas where someone in your team does something that you found has worked really well? Obviously, feel free to unmute your mics if you would like to contribute, or use the chat. So at Greenwich, we use something called Next Level. Some of you may know this. As with most resources, it is primarily available to franchise students, although we do run Next Level live, and those sessions are available for QA students as well. So they can sign up to the Next Level live sessions. And essentially Next Level is trying to combat that kind of embarrassment and that difficulty around not having that knowledge. And so it's specifically branded as Next Level of, in terms of anyone can join it at any point, because throughout, no matter where you are in your journey, at one point you're always moving to the next level. So whether that is you're a first year undergrad and you're moving to start at university for the first time, that's you moving up a level to university, or whether you are going into your second year of university, so you've been at university a year but you don't know what the second year is going to be like, so it's still a new thing, there's uncertainty there. Or it could be a mature student returning to education after a while, or a postgraduate student who's moving to the next level after an undergraduate degree. So it's kind of applicable for everyone, essentially. And that's where we try and kind of make that a bit more of a, there are no stupid questions, because everybody is having a new experience at this point, and therefore uncertainty is expected. So that's kind of one of the ways that we try and combat that. that sense of uncertainty and that lack of confidence there. So Donna, yeah, students can ask the same question repeatedly too, but seems an unintended consequence if it's used to avoid the tutors. Yeah, and I think, I guess maybe one way of addressing that is talking to students about the fact that, yes, AI can answer your questions. And, you know, if you're not comfortable or not always comfortable talking to a person, then that's absolutely something that it can be useful for. But also, sometimes it is useful for tutors to know those questions, right? So I think a lot of the time students are thinking of it as, this is my experience and this is my problem, but they're not necessarily thinking of it of actually like, oh, if I'm brave enough to ask my tutor that question, there's probably other people who don't know the answer to that as well. And then my tutor can then answer that for everybody, so they can help the whole class rather than just kind of helping themselves, I suppose. So maybe that's one way in which we could encourage students to ask things more publicly, or, you know, in an anonymous way, but then allow a tutor to address things publicly. So perhaps like anonymous feedback forms, for example, or an anonymous way of asking questions that goes to the tutor, and then the tutor can like publicly address that in a class or a seminar, where then again it's kind of that idea of like, if you don't want to, you know, put your hand up and be the person among the masses who asks the question, which is fair enough, you're still getting that answer and it's still being helpful for everyone. And also, you know, it's good feedback for the tutor, because it may be that the tutor can then change their teaching materials to make sure that's clearer next time, you know. So maybe that's also another way that we could try and encourage them to kind of come back to the tutor, as like that's a part of the learning and teaching experience essentially, and it's part of this idea of it's not just you, it's a collegiate experience essentially, right? So I wonder if that's maybe one way in which we could try and combat that a little bit, or talk to our academic teaching staff about that as well. I'm aware that I am talking quite a lot. So does anyone else want to come in on that or on anything else? So a lot of this is talking about kind of Gen AI and student engagement. Does anyone want to come in on anything else are there any new initiatives that you have run this year? Are people struggling with student engagement? So obviously, Donna shared that article, thank you, Donna, about sort of students struggling to engage with the tutors. But are we finding that with the library as well? So I know, Erin, you said a lot of the students, if they can't find the answer, kind of all the resources easily and on their phone or through AI, they don't necessarily bother. And I would say we're certainly finding that at Greenwich, where we are finding a lot of students are absolutely defaulting to Gen AI to do their research process essentially, and that's where we are starting to be much more proactive when we as librarians go into modules and programs to talk to students. We are starting to be much more proactive about acknowledging that and saying to them, yes, AI probably is easier to use than the library systems, if we're honest, but you know, here's where it's not as good, or here's where you should be cautious, or here's where you should use AI, but actually then you should use something else, you know. So it's trying to kind of meet the students where they're at a lot of the time is what we're looking at this point. I don't know how anyone else feels about that. So whether you've seen engagement drop off with your borrowing of library resources, so whether that's physical or e-resources, and engagement with any sessions, drop-ins, workshops that you are running. So like Erin said, not really getting any traction with those kind of exam support workshops. Is anyone else finding that? Sebastian?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, yeah. In my case, I have seen a drop in borrowing academic resources, but because we carry a large collection of print music, that's still quite prevalent. I mean, students need music and they can't get that through AI. They can't just put in a prompt for AI, could you give me a copy of this song? So that's remained unchanged. There's still a lot of students borrowing music and asking for music, so we have a lot of that. But in terms of academic texts or textbooks, yes, that's gone lower. And as Erin said, I don't really get a lot of engagement with academic sessions, but the one-to-ones are still quite popular. So I guess dissertation students need help with finding resources, but not a lot for group sessions. I think that's also because I think somebody said something about practical, because we at Bird, I mean, the course is mostly practical. There's a lot of singing, there's a lot of dancing. It's not a focus on academic work. So
Yeah.
I think, students mostly put 90% of their time into practical work rather than, So I
Yeah,
think
of
that's
course.
also participating into that drop. And in terms of AI, I don't really get a lot of questions about AI, to be honest. I mean, I found your session, Laura, quite interesting. And also, Erin had the built-in AI, the organization built-in AI. That was very interesting because I've never heard about that before. I mean, I knew about ChatGPT and Copilot, but I didn't know we got to the point where now organizations have their own built-in AI. So that was quite interesting.
It's really
to hear.
interesting, right?
Yeah. I think because personally, I don't use it very often. I usually use it to show students how to maybe look for resources, put in a prompt for journal articles or things like that. But in my work, I don't really use it very often. So that was a bit surprising to me that everything moved in so quickly.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The kind of variation, I guess, across the roles, because of course it is becoming more common. But like you say, Sebastian, I think some institutions are moving a bit faster with it than others are, which is fascinating. I would say at Greenwich we have very similar to you, where we're finding in general across the board less engagement with the kind of group sessions, and probably a drop in the access to the electronic resources as well. And I know, Donnie, you said that as well. But we're still getting a huge amount of like one-to-one requests, exactly, where it's again like dissertation students, students with like specialist projects who are really looking for that one-on-one, more detailed support. So we're really finding that as well.
Yes, I think in my case, there's been more usage with digital resources for academic texts, because most of our collection now we're trying to sort of move into adding more, print music.
Yeah.
So we're moving towards digital resources in terms of our academic texts and articles, and we're trying to also add a bit of visual resources. Because there's not a lot of there's not a lot of demand for academic texts.
Of course, yeah. So I think, Sebastian, you and Erin, so you may not have met before because, as Erin said, she's quite new at Plumpton. But the two of you probably have quite a lot in common because so Erin Sebastian works at Bird College, and Bird are, although very different subjects to Plumpton, are again, like Sebastian said, very sort of practical based. So the courses are largely kind of music and performing arts, and that's very practical based. They use a lot of the kind of print materials, and it's not so much embedded within the kind of academic practice, I guess. I hope that's fair to say, Sebastian. So I think the two of you, your students are very similar, although they're on very different courses.
Well, I just Googled you, Sebastian. I found your email address, so I will send you an email and we'll connect.
Oh, okay.
Just doing this while you were talking, I'm like, right, where is he?
Yeah, I think that sounds great because I do think, the two of you have got a lot in common, and exactly, it might be really good for you to kind of, you know, pick each other's brains essentially, right? As librarians, isn't that what we all do? We just pick each other's brains.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll shoot you an email. We'll connect for sure.
Oh, looking forward to it.
So I'm just looking in the chat. So Donna, you've been asked for videos. So that's interesting. So we are also looking at videos a lot more, but we're finding essentially, and I hate to use this phrase, but we're essentially looking at like TikTok videos in terms of like very short content. So I'm interested to see whether you're looking similarly or whether your videos are going to be sort of longer. So we have quite a lot of videos that are, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and we're just finding they're too long. The students are not getting engagement with them. So we're looking at really doing some like videos that are maybe like a couple of minutes long, essentially, as a like very short and sweet introduction to something. Okay, so you're also looking at that. Okay, yeah. So I guess that's fairly similar across the board then in terms of the way in which students want to access that information, I guess. Which is really interesting. And then, Sharon, so you sound like you've been doing loads in terms of interesting. So to help combat loneliness, I don't know if you are able or willing to unmute, Sharon, and say a little bit more about that. Like in terms of, are you finding, has that problem grown? Like how have you kind of identified that there is this problem with loneliness with your students and staff, I guess?
Hello. Yeah, it was something that came out from the FE Commission, that they wanted us to make our libraries more friendly and more welcoming and help combat loneliness, to help with mental health, I suppose, of the agenda behind it. And last week we actually completed a 5,000 piece puzzle that took 6 weeks to do, which was fantastic.
Wow. So do you have that? So you just sort of have it out and people just go and do a few bits, like sort of collaboratively almost?
Yeah, and we've got students with all different abilities that sit with each other and they start talking, and we've got even teaching staff that are finding it therapeutic as well to come in, and they're engaging with students they wouldn't normally talk to, and wide range. We have Lego in a quiet seating area that they sit and play Lego. We've started doing other things like we're trying to engage people more with reading as well. So we've done campaigns like you've seen the film, now read the book type of thing. So things like with Wicked and one of the other films that was out recently, one of the classics, I can't remember which one that was. But yeah.
Wuthering Heights? Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights, that's it. Yeah, Wuthering Heights. So things like, and people are picking them up from the displays. So we're going to be doing things more as well with that. So because it's been quite successful. We also have a board where we pose questions on the board and they engage with that as well quite nicely. So at the moment we've put in what's one word you like about college or one word you dislike about college. So there's things coming up on there as well. That's been really popular, that they just like to be able to write how they've how are you feeling today, and it's quite good. So,
Mm.
but
Do you
yes, go on, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, do you have any issues with that? So like with your comment board, for example, do you ever get anything that's inappropriate? Do you ever have any like Lego that goes missing or puzzle pieces?
Puzzle pieces have gone missing. And we did complete the 5,000 piece one, which we were surprised it was all there. And we left it out for a week so other students could see it. And then someone decided to take a piece, which wasn't very nice. But
yeah.
But Lego probably has gone missing. It's hard to know because we've got loads of it just sort of sitting in pots where they can sit in that area. Yeah, and we tried to look at things that could be a bit more academic. That's why we did Scrabble. So it could be like, they could be, you know, learning to spell really and things like that, and learning what new words mean. But the board, yes, we do need to keep an eye on it. And yeah, and sometimes they write in different languages, so we have to translate it as well. So AI comes in handy when we're doing translation.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's been quite good. So the book campaign we're doing, so things like so when Halloween comes, we're going to do sort of more like things like Frankenstein, that sort of thing, to relate with that, and romances in Valentine's. We've got loads of little ideas that are sort of springing out. Origami we're looking at doing as well. I've got the sheets, I just haven't put them out yet. So little things like that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Colouring in is another one. Colouring in, so we make that themed as well around anything that's happening, like Black History Month or LGBT Pride, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Yeah, so we do colouring in events occasionally, but we're not really theming them. So that's really interesting. I might feed that back to our people who are in charge of it. So
yeah. Yes, it's popular. It's doing good. Yeah, it's been good fun actually to do something different.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds great. I'm really impressed with like the sort of range of things that you're doing, and the engagement sounds amazing. So it's really fascinating. Erin?
Yeah, so one of the things we was in charge of at Sussex was I was in charge of sort of the displays and exhibitions within the library, and I'm translating that over to Plumpton. So we at Sussex, we would have both weekly and monthly displays, and I managed to get a little bit of budget to get some nice display cabinets and everything. So we would have monthly displays for things like women's LGBTQ History Month, and stuff like that, but then weekly displays on different sort of themed topics. And those would be used not only to sort of highlight things that are going on in the world, like, Holocaust Memorial Day or whatever, but also to highlight what was going on in the university and to highlight different sort of areas of research that students perhaps wouldn't have access to because it wasn't within their sort of, realm of study. And that's something that I want to do at Plumpton, and to really sort of highlight what's sort of going on. So one of the departments we have at Plumpton is that we have metallurgy and jewelry making. So we really want to showcase students' work in jewelry making and jewelry craft. We want to showcase sort of the floristry students' work and all the different sort of things that are going on. So I'm part of the EDI committee at Plumpton. So we're working together to sort of make a calendar of different things that are going on sort of nationally and internationally, and we'll be highlighting those throughout the year. So we just had our Pride event last week at Plumpton, and so we'll be doing that each year and just sort of really highlighting, but also working with external organizations such as the Gypsy Roma Traveller Heritage Group. So we'll be doing something for the Heritage Month for that. The South Asian History Month also comes along, so we're working with the external organizations, and it's really about sort of increasing engagement, but also making the library sort of a physical hub for those kinds of things within the college, so that it brings people into the library to come and see these exhibitions and to see these sort of different things that are going on. And then hopefully they'll be like, oh, I can do schoolwork here as well. I can get academic stuff. Oh, there's books and there's resources. So yeah, it is about sort of trying to bring people in. So things like, Blind Date with a Book is amazing, board games and stuff like that. So yeah. And I found that at Sussex, that really, really increased the engagement. And what also ended up happening is that we would have different student groups coming and saying, from the student union or whatever, saying, oh, can we curate a display? Can we do something? And having students lead on things that they want to do is really, really good as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think there's so much good work going on, isn't there? And it's very much, you know, like you're saying, it's not just about the kind of academic side of it. There's also that kind of well-being, sense of belonging, you know, community, kind of like the library is the third space kind of stuff that is really important, and that you know, isn't necessarily like explicit within the kind of remit of our jobs, but really does, there is a kind of responsibility there, really. And it can be, like you say, Sharon, like just really fun to like do some different things. So like we also have some Lego that we don't have out all the time, but we do it sometimes with the colouring in events where we'll have the Lego as well. And again, it's just really nice to be able to chat to staff and students, and exactly they kind of talk to each other as well when they're doing that. And I find that really, really nice to see, especially when obviously a lot of the time when you have students in the library, they're really focused on, you know, exam support or, you know, revising, whatever it is, and they can be a bit more highly stressed. So it can be nice to have those kind of more chill encounters, I guess. So all this sounds like amazing. So I'm aware we've got 9 minutes until this meeting is scheduled to finish, and I hate overrunning, so I won't overrun. But does anyone have anything else that they want to share? So anything else that you've been doing, anything else you're interested in doing, that you might want to see if anyone else has done and get some ideas? Anything you think you're really going to kind of put a big focus on? So obviously for Greenwich, we are looking, particularly in the academic and digital skills team, we're really looking at that kind of development of the support for Gen AI, for how we kind of almost reposition ourselves in this kind of new world where students are defaulting to that, and how we ensure that we kind of stay relevant, and that we upskill ourselves as well, you know, so that we're also keeping up with the students, essentially. So we've kind of got quite a big focus on that as a team. But of course, then there's all business as usual as well, of just supporting the students and running the library, essentially. So yeah, is there anything that anyone else is kind of focusing on or looking to do in the upcoming year? I know we're moving into summer, which means hopefully, she says, crossing all her fingers and touching all the wood in the room, there will be slightly more breathing space for us to think about these things when there's hopefully less students around. No? Okay. I will take that as nobody is willing to share, or maybe you just don't quite have the mental space right now to think about that, which is entirely fair. So in that case, if nobody has anything else they want to share, so any examples of good practice or any advice you want to ask from everyone here, then I will just say thank you very much to everybody for attending. Thank you to Karen for her presentation and for sharing her expertise. And I really hope this has been useful for everyone. As ever, please do get in touch with me if you have any questions. So if you have any questions about access to resources or access to support. So remember, all of your students, whether they are QA or franchise can still access loads of support through the university. So if you have any questions about that, please do get in touch. If you're running any initiatives that you think are helpful, or you want to work with any of the librarians here on, for example, running sessions for your students on the use of generative AI, or on accessing the resources or research skills, and you want to collaborate on some of that stuff, please let me know, because we would be absolutely delighted to do that. I know you're all doing really great work, but obviously a lot of you are in quite small teams, so please do reach out and make use of the support. We have lots of librarians at Greenwich who would be very happy to work with you, and I know some of you already work with my colleagues here, but please do let us know if that's something you're interested in. You can always just email me and we can absolutely set up a chat to talk about that. And obviously we can sort of like deliver things remotely, or maybe in some cases even come down and deliver things. So I know Karen, for example, is happy to deliver things at Bird College. I say dropping her in it.
No, we were discussing doing stuff in June, although June seems to be moving along very quickly now.
It does, doesn't it? Exactly. So Karen and everyone else in our team is very happy to do those. So please do reach out to me or to the librarians directly if you already have contacts with them. So Teams is not allowing me to share any of the slides because it's super helpful like that. I think it's the organizational policy because there's externals. But I will just send everyone an email if you're happy with that and attach the slides that Karen and I used. You can absolutely feel free to use those, disseminate those as you wish if they are helpful. And like I said, please do get in touch. If you have any questions or want to work on anything with us, or get one of us in to come and run a session. I've run several sessions in the past year for partner students, online and in person, and I'm happy to do that, and I know my team are as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me 3 hours of your day, which is a very decent chunk. I'm aware of that.
And
yeah, exactly.
Technology.
Exactly. And as Erin and Sebastian were saying, if you think it would be helpful to get in touch with anyone else on this call, then please do reach out to them, or obviously let me know and I can ask them about sharing emails and anything like that. Okay, so I will let everyone go and enjoy the rest of your day and the delightful heat wave that seems to be coming our way. And yeah, have a good rest of the week. Thank you very much, everyone. I will also share the recording once it's available. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.